hello or greeting in Gumbaynggirr Wajad or Gumbaynggirr country from the rivers of Northern New South Wales. My name is Lisa Southgate. I'm a National Senior Project Officer in the National Recovery and Psychosocial Support Team at Red Cross Australia. I'm a Gumbaynggirr and Bundjalung Jinda, or sister, what I call from Bindere Wajad, or river country. Like my First Nations brothers and sisters across Australia, I belong to my Wajad and continue an inherited connection with and responsibility for our rivers, mountains, seas, and landscapes. The voice I have today comes from the strength, resilience, and visions of my people past, present, and those with me today. So I stand with pride speaking to you and representing all of us and them. I would like to acknowledge and pay respects to our First Nations communities and elders, past, present, and emerging from across the country and from all the lands where everyone is meeting from today. I would like to welcome everybody to today's launch of the Australian Red Cross Community-led Resilience Teams, and also pay recognition to the many people and their hard work that brings us together today. From my homelands, I would like to say, Duriya Yam Wajad Guru, which means welcome. This is country, friends. Yada yadang. Thank you. Today I'd like to welcome our host, Anne Leadbeater. Anne is the Red Cross Disaster Recovery Advisor and Director of Leadbeater Group Proprietary Limited, specialising in disaster recovery and community resilience. Her background is in emergency management, community development, and adult education through neighbourhood house sector and local and state government. Anna's worked with communities recovering from drought, fire, flood and cyclone in Victoria, New South Wales, South Australia and Queensland. In 2004, she led an international team to evacuate the Christchurch earthquake appeal for New Zealand Red Cross. Anne delivers national training for recovery practitioners and completed a review of the National Recovery Handbook for the Australian Institute for Disaster Resilience. Anne lives in Kinglake, Victoria, and was awarded a Medal of the Order of Australia for her work in the aftermath of the 2009 Black Saturday bushfires.
Thank you so much for that, Lisa. Thank you for your kind welcome to country and for that introduction. I'm delighted to be here today to be presiding over this fantastic and exciting launch of the Community Resilience Teams initiative. Anyone who's spent more than 5 minutes in my company will know that I'm a passionate advocate for communities leading their own recovery and all of that wisdom and expertise that exists within communities. And so I'm very excited to see that Red Cross has developed this model, this new way of working with communities that actually enhances and mobilises all of that great capacity. We've got a very full agenda for you this morning. We'll be starting with an introduction to the model, the Community-led Resilience Teams model. Then we'll be hearing from John McLennan, who's the Red Cross Divisional Advisory Board Chair. We'll also be joined by Shane Fitzsimmons, AFSM, who's the Community Resilience Commissioner for New South Wales. We'll be talking to Tammy Jones around the origins of this Community Resilience Teams model. Then we'll be hearing from John Quayle, a community member from Pumpenville in New South Wales. We've got a panel for you to talk about different experiences of using the model, and then we'll have a community reflection from Hayley from Ewangar, and then we'll be hearing also from Doreen Harwood, who's the chair of the Tweed Byron Local Emergency Management Group. Some testimonials from members of Parliament around the value and potential of this model. And then some further community reflections from Bar Yulgul and Mala Sorry, I have been practicing that one. Andrew Coghlan from Head of Emergency Services, Australian Red Cross, will be speaking to us, and then we'll hear again from some community members from Uingar. So lots and lots to cover, and really just, excited to hear where all of this will go. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce John McLennan. And John will be speaking to us as the New South Wales Divisional Advisory Board member for Australian Red Cross.
Thanks, Anne. Good morning, everybody. Can I just commence by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I am sitting at the moment, which is the Camaragal people of the Eora Nation in northern Sydney. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. And on behalf of our President, Ross Pinney, and all of the Red Cross Board, I am pleased to welcome you all to the launch of this very important initiative, the Red Cross Community-led Resilience Teams Guide. Thanks, Anne, for being our MC today. And thank you all, Anne, for all of the recovery work that you do with communities and with the Red Cross, including donating your time as a member of our bushfire appeal panel for the Black Summer bushfires. We do deeply value your expertise and your guidance, so thank you very much. Thanks also to our special guest, Commissioner of Resilience New South Wales, Shane Fitzsimmons, for your support of this event and your continued support of our Red Cross emergency services work in New South Wales, and of course your support for our communities in New South Wales as a whole. I know that we have many Red Cross emergency services volunteers and staff who have met you in person at an evacuation centre or recovery centre, and you've always taken the time to thank them in person for their work. A very warm welcome to everyone here today and everyone who's been involved in putting together this showcase of communities working together. Red Cross is, of course, an organisation founded on the principles of volunteering and people helping people. This community-led resilience team initiative was created by our very dedicated New South Wales Red Cross volunteers, members of their local community who recognised a need, who wanted to support local people to work together with emergency response agencies to prepare for disasters. It started out as a great idea in a local community, which then developed into a small initiative and has already grown into a much larger initiative to support many more communities. A special thank you to our volunteers, Marie Rogers and Tammy Jones, for their great idea and all of their hard work since then. So on behalf of the board, welcome again, and I hope you enjoy the showcase.
Thank you so much, John, for those kind words. And it's now my great pleasure to welcome Shane Fitzsimmons, who is the Commissioner of Resilience for New South Wales. Welcome, Shane, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Anne. It's a pleasure to be with you and the team. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join. And it is my privilege just to reflect a little, and particularly through the communications we continue to have with Poppy and all the team at Red Cross here in New South Wales, and focusing on this wonderful community-led or community-initiated activity that has transformed into the community-led Resilience Teams CRT project for the Red Cross. I think it's been a test of resilience in its own right, because as our communication goes with Poppy and all the team, it's been many months now trying to get this launch up and running. But all sorts of other challenges have befallen us, particularly in relation to COVID. But it is great to be able to see, quite rightly, the launch of the program and to see its adoption and utilisation already being experienced in earnest in so many different areas, so many different local communities making a really important difference. And when I look at resilience and I reflect on resilience and what that means for us as a new organisation, and for me personally, as I've gotten around and spoken to a lot of people, we know that resilience is built through lived experience. It's not about bouncing back to normal after a disaster or event, like is often simplistically portrayed, because why would anyone want to bounce back to normal? What is normal in any case? And why would you want to be just as susceptible or vulnerable to the next challenge or the next disruption? So it really is about learning through lived experiences. It's about growing and developing and being able to adapt and anticipate and ready ourselves for the next challenges in life so that we can do better and get through those circumstances as well. So the criticality behind that is that we've seen a truncating effect, a significant compounding effect of the last couple of years, with a scale and complexity and a reach of challenges and disasters that have impacted communities right across New South Wales and also elsewhere, but speaking through a New South Wales lens, whether it's droughts and bushfires, storms and floods, COVID, more storms and floods, mouse plagues, you name it. We've seen an extraordinary level of impact and disruption to the way we live, to the way local communities live. But what we have seen, so many silver linings through that very difficult and testing regime, is the criticality and the benefits of meaningful and purposeful collaboration. And whether that's governments at the state level, the Commonwealth level, our local council partners, business, industry groups, and of course our not-for-profit and charitable sector coming together with community organisations, local leadership sectors, local representative bodies, and of course our volunteers. We've seen a remarkable commitment to coming together, to disarm ourselves with egos, but want to work together to simply do the very best we can to support and assist and enable and empower local communities to rebuild, to repair, to recover, but importantly to heal, given what's been challenging for many. For many, they've experienced multiple and compounding. At the very least, communities have experienced at least one of those remarkable events that have challenged the way we live and operate. But it's through that experience that we see the importance, the fundamental importance, the platform of building on community strengths and the value of volunteers in that local community sector. Despite the record amounts, the unprecedented levels of disaster support and assistance packages in their many billions of dollars alone in New South Wales across bushfires and floods and increasingly now more and more COVID programs are materialising in so many ways. We know the best led anything is that which is locally led and locally prioritised. And no matter how our governance and our policy constructs are formulated and designed, we've got to make sure that we've got the relative flexibility and nuance to accommodate and address the necessarily varying and different needs and priorities of local communities. And that's not just local communities from one distinctly different geographic area to another, but it's local communities, within local government areas that also need to be able to be accommodated in that governance framework, but give us the flexibility and the nuance to allow for that local tailoring and that local need and priority that varies from one location to another. And we know, there's no doubt about it, that the importance of initiatives such as the Red Cross CRT is worthy of recognition and praise. And it was so pleasing to see that the CRT was a joint winner in the 2020 New South Wales Resilient Australia Awards, particularly in the community category. And since its accolades were rightly bestowed and recognised, we've seen the program being adopted in more than 100 different local locations as part of the ongoing local recovery programs, initiatives that are being called out for and sought out by local communities. And getting its genesis up there in northern New South Wales, I think that's something that not only the locals that led and designed the program as being exampled up here on the screen now, but all those that have been involved in championing and adopting and sponsoring and seeing it through to a model and a pilot that can be adopted and utilised elsewhere. There is no doubt in my mind, and I'm sure we'll get nods everywhere, but the best led anything, the best led planning, the best led response, the best led relief, the best led recovery is that which is locally led, that which is community led. And our roles at all different levels is to make sure we're doing our very best to ensure the right level of facilitation, empowerment, enablement in coordinating and collaborating so that we can see that best led, locally led community effort deliver what really matters and what is really needed. And there's no doubt that the Red Cross CRT goes right to the core of that. And the other aspect that I'm really impressed with, and I applaud everybody for, is that we recognise unequivocally the critical power and the critical underpinning of viable community sustainability and resilience, and that is around volunteers. And as I've said in public forums many times before, I would challenge anyone to have a look in their local community, no matter where you are. Look at the things that work well, and I'm willing to bet you that you'll find it's underpinned by volunteers. And it doesn't matter whether it's in our environmental and bush care services, or indeed whether it's our sporting endeavours or our education pursuits, our community care services, and of course right through to our emergency services and our relief agencies that provide so much support in terms of response, relief and recovery arrangements. And you'll find it's underpinned by volunteers, because volunteers are absolutely, in my view, the critical thread that is often unrecognised, that stitches communities together, that binds communities together, that holds communities together. The capacity to be part of something, to have a sense of purpose and belonging, to be able to make a difference in your local community, knowing that's what your community is looking for and needing. I think absolutely the Red Cross CRT seeks to underpin, leverage, sponsor and grow that sort of critical community-based, volunteer recognised, collaborative effort that's occurring right across communities around our great state and around our great nation. So I want to simply say to Poppy and all the team, and in particular, as we've got up there on the screen, Tammy, Marie and Jasmine, wonderful initiative. Congratulations. You should be very proud, as this examples, simply examples of remarkable commitment and dedication and effort going on all the time. And it's doing it very much in partnership and collaboration with so many others. And it's a wonderful time to celebrate and see this launch finally underway. So thank you very much for the opportunity to say a few brief words and reflect a little on the importance of resilience and how seemingly little programs like this can make a massive difference in the lives of individuals and communities right across our great state. Thanks, Anne.
Thank you so much, Shane, and for those really important observations. As you've highlighted so powerfully, emergency management is everyone's job, isn't it? And the more that we get that collaboration and working together refined and fine-tuned, the better we do. So thank you so much for joining us today, and fantastic news about the recognition of the program through the Resilient Australia Awards. So thank you.
Thanks, Anne. All the very best.
So we're going to be covering some difficult content today, as is always the case with emergencies. There's potentially some information that that will strike a particular chord with people. So just some information there about that, and to know that there'll be some information following. If any of what we talk about today raises any issues for you, there will be some information about who you might speak with in relation to that. So we're now going to hear, we're actually going to be watching a video that's going to help us understand what the catalyst for this program was and where the need for it was really first recognised. So the images you've been seeing there have represent the impact of Tropical Cyclone Debbie on communities in northern New South Wales. And I'm now joined by Red Cross volunteer Tammy Jones, and Tammy's going to tell us a little bit about how the CRT model has come into being and how it works. Welcome, Tammy.
Hi.
I first met Tammy when she was undertaking professional development and further study in emergency management, and it's just marvellous to see what she's been doing in relation to both her work with Red Cross and also the development of this program. So Tammy, there are very significant impacts that were experienced by the communities in northern New South Wales as a result of Tropical Cyclone Debbie. Can you tell me a little bit about how the CRT program actually came into being, what the idea around that is, and how it's come about?
Yeah, as you said, it was after Cyclone Debbie, we were out as Red Cross volunteers in the community doing outreach, and we were listening to people's stories and experiences. And we wanted to know, I guess, started thinking, got me thinking, I guess, as a person, what we could really do to actually help them feel connected and better prepared, because a lot of people actually felt like they weren't prepared for what had happened, even though it did actually happen quite suddenly. We wanted to think of something that we could actually help them with and be able to move forward and be prepared for the next emergency that may happen. That's what got me thinking, and I guess I went back to my own sort of experiences as a child in the 1974 floods, and community really worked together and helped each other, and these bonds really helped everyone in the times of crisis and recovery. So this first photo was a photo of my pop and dad in the 1974 floods, and during those floods was when our community came together and they helped us. We had lost all our windows in the storm, and they came together to help us board the windows up. And my dad, being a butcher and having meat as well in the fridge and so forth, actually gave meat out to different community members who needed it. And then the next photo is me and my brother and sister out the front of the butcher shop. And the next two photos are photos of the street that we lived in, looking down from the butcher shop down into the street that we lived in and where it flooded.
Yeah, and so just being able to mobilise that community capacity is so important. Can you tell us a little bit about how the CRT program works?
So the CRT program is actually, it's based on a network of neighbourhood of people. It could be neighbours, it could be people within a street, between causeways, language or group. It's just a group of people, like-minded people coming together to support each other. And it's also about a communication link throughout that community so that people get real information in real time.
Fantastic. We've just been seeing some images there of your childhood in your town and community that was impacted by flooding, as you mentioned, in the early 70s. So the key sort of characteristics, I guess, what is it about this model that sort of sets it apart?
It can start as little as one person in a community, and we've actually had that happen in our area here. But I think the key thing that sets it apart is exactly what the title says, is that it's community-led. We just go into community and work with community members and leaders and give them the tools that they need to start those connections if they're not already there, or use those existing networks. And yeah, I guess that's it.
And as we heard from Shane, the response has been really encouraging. What have you encountered when you've been talking to communities about this model? What sort of response have you received?
We've had a really great response. Every community that we go to are really feel really passionate about actually being able to help their own community. And I think that's another reason why it actually works, because it's in their community with their people, their neighbours and their friends. So yeah, as Shane said before, we're now in 100 communities all over the LGAs in northern New South Wales, and hopefully this can roll out right throughout New South Wales.
Yeah, and hopefully right around Australia. That would be just fantastic.
That would be great.
Yeah, it's outstanding, and it's an outstanding program, Tammy. And as you've said, the simplicity that it can be sort of driven by the interest and enthusiasm of just one person, and it networks out from there. So that's that's a really significant and useful aspect of the program, I'm sure. And one of the challenges is always, how do we get that collaboration between emergency services and the community? Who do we speak to? What's the entry point? So I can see that the CRT is really addressing that need. What's your wish for the future? Is there something that you would really like to see come about for the future of the program?
Oh, I think for everybody, I would just really love to see all communities, no matter where they are, that it could be adapted to suit their community, because it's such a flexible model, and it does work with all the, whether it's geographical or different types of groups that make up that community, because it's so flexible and it's free, and you have the support of Red Cross volunteers and the organisation. I just think it's really great, a great initiative for everybody to take on.
Fantastic. And yeah, look, the future would appear to be very bright based on what we're hearing today. So congratulations, Tammy. It's just a remarkable initiative, and one that I'm sure is going to go from strength to strength. So an amazing effort in the development of it, and again, from the community and based on lived experience, is a great and strong platform to start from. So wonderful. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So we're going to be hearing now from some communities that have been working with Red Cross using the CRT model. And first of all, we have a video coming up featuring John Quayle from Pumpenville, and he's going to be telling us a little bit about his community's experience with the CRT.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Quayle. I live out at Pumpenville on a cattle breeding property, and I'm also the team leader for the Community Resilience Team. We started this probably 18 months, 2 years ago now, when we first got involved with Tammy, and it's been quite a remarkable success. All our neighbours now, well, we have quite a few of the neighbours which we never knew, we know now quite well, become good friends with. One of the big advantages is that particularly the street coordinators in our area now also know everybody. Well, they don't know everybody, but they know a biggest percentage of them. And so when we have an issue or a problem, it's quite easy now to sort of action the issues. But not only that, it's been a very important part of the community, from community spirit, to involve the community, to get to know people and be involved with everybody. So I think that I'd certainly recommend a community resilience team for every area. I think every area should have it, because it's a network of people who can come together when there's a problem and try and solve the problem as a community. One of the big advantages that we've had on our property is that in the last 12 months or so, we've done a lot of reforestation, rehabilitation, planting trees for the koalas. And because of the network that we have established here, we've had quite a lot of assistance from the local community, which is great. So all in all, I think that the community resilience teams are a very important part of our community, and in conjunction with the Red Cross, we find I think that we should all be involved in them as much as possible. Thank you.
I'm welcoming some panel members to our launch event today, and so I'm very, very pleased to be joined by Karen Challand.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Karen. Fabulous to have you here. And Karen is a CRT leader and a community member from the Kunga community. And Natasha, where have we got Natasha? Great. Natasha Wernick. Hi, Natasha. How are you? Natasha is also a CRT leader and a community member from the Beryl Creek community. We've also have with us today Doug Rowley, and Doug is the captain of the Byron Bay RFS Brigade. Welcome, Doug. And Janet Pettit. Janet is Community Capability Officer for New South Wales SES Northern Zone. So welcome all, and thank you so much for being here to talk about the CRT model and your experience with it. If I can begin by posing a question, Karen and Natasha, to you, and that is, how has the CRT helped your community connect and be better prepared? What sort of a difference has it made to your communities?
Well, we're quite remote where we are. We're in our communities are side by side, and we live outside of Murwillumbah in the country. Natasha's area is a little bit different from mine, like all areas in CRTs. But basically, my Kunga CRT started up when the fires, not long after the fires happened in 2019. And despite COVID slowing things up, how I feel that we've helped our community is we've had a few community days, one very big one that Natasha was also involved with, where we had all the first responders, we had St John's Ambulance, we had the Tweed Shire Council. So we had a lot of different people engaging with the community and going through all sorts of scenarios. We even had community members learning CPR and practicing using a defibrillator. And of course, introducing the CRTs and signing different people up. So that's definitely helped them. At the same time, over the period of time that I've been involved, we started a Facebook page specifically for our area to give factual, up-to-date information as things occur, and also a web page and various other things. But maybe Natasha would like to add something there.
Thanks, Karen, and thank you, Anne, and thank you for inviting me to be here. So our community at Beryl Creek was very affected by the Cyclone Debbie floods. The main bridge was cut off, and we were literally in Ireland for about 3 or 4 days until our community got together and dug ourselves out. So part of the benefits of the CRT in our area is that we have been able to work out who is in our area, who are the vulnerable people in our area, who has the resources. So if it happens again and we have to dig ourselves out, who has those resources that we can dig ourselves out with, literally. And also, it's also brought us together. You know, I'm the leader of now 10 different neighbourhoods within our small, community. There's only about 200 people in the community. And a lot of those people I had not spoken with, and I've been in the community for about 10 years. They sort of, when I put out there that we're setting up this community resilience team, would anybody like to join? They came and said, yes, we really need to connect more within our community to support each other. The CRT model has been really effective in me empowering those neighbourhood leaders. So essentially the phone tree system, where if something from the Red Cross comes through to me, I send it through my leaders to the community, and also the other way around. So if we are whenever there's 100 mils of rain or 70 mils of rain, we're flooded in, and we need to be able to communicate with our community so that they don't make wrong choices with crossing. They can make good choices. Many of them work in Mullum or Murwillumbah, and they're making a decision on whether they should come home or not. That communication wasn't available before the CRT. And now with our CRT, we've recognised we want flood level markers so that we can say, okay, the river's at 705. So it'll probably be going up, so make other plans. Just keeping our community informed. And it's also the connection during these COVID times. We've been trapped, and so it's really nice to know that there's others within walking distance who we can call on. In the March 2017 flood, that was certainly not like that. We felt very alone, isolated, unheard, like we were, hello, anybody out there? And it's very different. The other day, the causeway went over. I was on the phone to Grant at the SES saying, look, the causeway's over in case something happens upstream and you need to get there, you can't. And so he was able to be more advised, and that kind of communication thing has been really powerful, and the connection in our community has been really powerful. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you both. And you've just given us such a great insight into both the adaptability of the program, Karen, with all of the different things that you've been able to highlight and offer through your community days, and also Natasha, that absolutely critical element of communication. When things go bad, we really need to be able to get information and communication happening. And so it sounds like the CRT has been, really useful in those ways. Fantastic. Thank you for those examples. And so Janet and Doug, to turn to you, I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about what benefits the CRT brings to your work with communities as first responders.
And you want me to go first?
Absolutely, that'd be great. Thanks, Doug.
Fantastic. So to answer your question, what I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of a brief outline of the RFS, who we are and what we do. So for over 100 years, we've been the lead combat agency for bushfires in New South Wales. We've got a total of 1,996 brigades with 76,000 volunteer members, and we cover about 95% of the landmass of New South Wales. So like everything I've been hearing from the beginning to now is that we're an organisation that relies very much on the community support. It's the community that provides us with our members, and it's the community that we exist to support and to serve. It's interesting, the mission statement of the RFS is to provide a world standard of excellence in the provision of community-based fire and emergency service. And to protect the community and the environment, we will minimise the impact of fire and other emergencies by providing the highest standard of training, community education, prevention and operational capability, which of course is working with our community and communicating with our community. The RFS uses an incident management system in every incident we attend, which is capable of being expanded from just one fire truck dealing with an issue to a major event, such as we saw in the 1925 season. And, seeing those images of Murwillumbah and the 2017 floods, I know my brigade spent days up there helping the community regain some degree of normality. And one can, unless you've experienced it, you have absolutely no idea what the smell of mud and the damage and the impact it has on people going on. So when we attend any incident, one of the things we do is feed information back into our incident management system. And while people in the community may or may not have access to information such as from the Fires Near Me app, having a direct link with a CRT can allow the New South Wales RFS a direct and immediate conduit to pass information and advice to communities likely to be impacted without directing the resources of the RFS away from the most important thing we do, which is our emergency response function. The other great thing about a CRT is that it can provide the direct link to communities, and I've been hearing about that from Karen and Natasha up in Birrell Creek and Kunga, about how important it is to talk to the members of the community. And that's one of the things that we try and do through our community engagement program, where we're encouraging people to have a fire plan and how to prepare their properties. So I think that CRT and the RFS working together is a terrific concept.
Thanks, Doug. And you've really helped to highlight it as being another string to your bow, isn't it, for RFS, another way of engaging and connecting with the community when things are tough, and also in terms of preparedness. Yeah, great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. And Janet, from the SES perspective, what does CRT offer for your organisation?
Yeah, the CRT model is a fantastic initiative, and I've seen Tammy and Marie in action, and they've done such great job sort of going out into all the communities that we as an agency actually can't get into, because if you think about the Tweed Shire, we've got over 90,000 population, probably more like going up to 100,000, and we only have probably 90 members across the SES members across the whole Tweed Shire. So we can't be everywhere, just like the RFS can't be everywhere, you know, with a fire truck. Many of our little communities that they've tapped into, we just can't get to them or get to you because you're cut off before we can actually get a truck to you or, you know, offer help in that way. So providing this, setting up the CRTs, it actually establishes that link into the community. And what I found is the best thing that's come out of it is that we can actually go in prior to any event and provide preparation advice so that people within the community know what they can do, know where to look on the Bureau, you know, talk to them about how they can prepare. Secondly, it's great when an event is coming, because I send off an alert to the SES unit commander, Jack Frost. His real name's Grant, but he gets the nickname Jack. But Jack then rings the people in the CRT and says, heads up, this is what's happening. He'll either call or he'll send a text message. And then they then take that message and spread it amongst their communities. So they're getting that early heads up. And as Doug mentioned, an important part of any event for us is knowing what's happening on the ground. And as I said, if we can't get up there, we can't see what's happening, but the information that CRT members feed back to us with photos, with, you know, the rivers at this point at wherever, that's so important for our planning back here at the SES headquarters. So I'd really congratulate Red Cross for what they've done. We started something, community action teams, which were on a similar basis with the communication, the phone trees. But I think what Red Cross have done, have taken our CATs and have expanded it to all hazards, like for fires and whatever else is going on. So yeah, we love working with the Red Cross and we look forward to doing it in the future.
Fantastic. Thanks, Janet. So we're hearing about that sort of two-way exchange of information and communication, which, as you've highlighted, is so important. 90 members for 90,000 people it means that your membership base is pretty thinly spread. So being able to mobilise the community in this kind of consistent way, I'm sure, is adding significant value to what SES is able to do. So thank you so much for those examples. Now, I'm going to ask each of you to have a little think about what advice you would give someone in a community that might be thinking about taking that step and saying, oh, I wonder if I could establish a CRT in my community. So Karen, can I start with you? Is there something that you would offer in terms of advice to someone in that situation?
Absolutely. I think that you have to realise that everybody's got different strengths and try to utilise those strengths. And that you, as a leader, you have to nurture people. So what I have found, and I live in a very remote and large area, and we have a long way to go to get more street coordinators. COVID hasn't helped. But what I've discovered is that some of my street leaders are a little bit hesitant to door knock, and we haven't been able to find them a buddy. So I've been going out where possible and doing it with them. And Red Cross has also offered to have some volunteers to help. So sometimes that might be what is needed to get to the grassroots for the residents and actually have a conversation. So I think you've got to nurture your people. You've got to also look at their strengths and what they're interested in. Some people have a personal interest in something and they may want to run a project within that. When you're organising big events, like I have done one huge event, and I have certainly had some help, but it was quite exhausting. And I think next time we'll be doing that yearly between the local CRTs. You've got to utilise those people in the right way. Some are organisers, some are doers, some are good to get the raffle going and that sort of thing. So basically, I think it's about having regular meetings, trying to have some social events and engage them, and also within your streets and get more people engaged. We don't have a place as such in our area. We're trying to get the hall back to being a shared space for that purpose, for emergencies and social connection. So it's a little challenging in my area because we actually don't have anywhere we can all meet. But if you do have a hall or anywhere, you know, have some community involvement, even just your team, and get them to bring a friend along. Yeah, that's it.
Fantastic, Karen. And I think that idea of capitalising on what people are interested in and good at, and also sharing the where would be important advice, because this is not a small task, albeit a very rewarding and worthwhile task for sure. Thank you. Natasha, any advice that you would give someone in a community that might be going to take the leap here?
Thank you. Yes. Some advice that I would give is be strategic about when you are going to set up this CRT. Timing is vital when the communities and people are so busy doing stuff. So maybe do it a post-flood or leading up to the fire season or leading up to the wet season. Another thing is to have little projects. So we meet monthly, and in some of our first meetings, we decided that we needed a big sign at the beginning of our community just to show that it is a community, and some flood markers, and we needed radios so that we can communicate during floods because the power goes out, etc. So then we have these projects that as a team we can work together on and look for funding. We also have, our meetings are very social, and we go to each other's place and have a walk around and be inspired by what they've done in their gardens, and we try and make it as compassionate, as heartfelt, and not just full of, because nobody's really got time to do all this. Everybody's got other more important things to do than to meet about this kind of stuff. So the more appealing you make the organisation or the meetings, that you have shared tasks or shared goals. You've got a vision. Okay, within the next 2 years we want to get this, and sure, we might not do anything for 2 months, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. And just being aware of who's vulnerable and learning about them. If there's somebody deaf in the community, then somebody needs to learn how to relate to them, and learning more about each other. They're the main things, I think. Just have projects, meet regularly, to have fun, be inspired by each other, and really, it's sharing the love. We're in this together kind of feeling.
It's fantastic. Thanks, Natasha. And what I'm hearing from you both is the importance of that social connection, and it doesn't all have to be doom and gloom, does it? You can have fun with this and actually build relationships through positive, enjoyable activities. You build resilience through connection. So it doesn't really matter why you connect, as long as you're coming together and doing things together. So fantastic advice. Thank you so much. Doug, what about you? What would you maybe you might be talking to a member of the community about how best to connect with RFS, or maybe it might be about advice to other RFS members about how to work effectively with CRTs.
Or indeed, how to work with the community, because I'm also involved in our community engagement, both locally and within the fire district. And the one thing I would think is you've got to have patience. It's my experience that most people in the community have an appreciation of what potential threats they face and the impact that they can potentially have, but it's human nature that they think it's never going to happen to them. And looking at and researching what the CRT is all about, it seems to me that the aims and objectives are absolutely rock solid. So just keep talking to the community and using the other first response agencies to help sell that message about being prepared and having a plan, because that puts you in control. So patience.
Great.
And perseverance.
Great advice. And yes, it may not happen straight away, but persistence and patience and continuing to work with community always pays dividends. So thanks, Doug.
Absolutely.
And last but certainly not least, Janet, any advice that you would give?
Yeah, if a community is interested in developing a CRT, I think it's great to get the talk to Temi or Marie, you know, straight up, because they can give advice, and they've got this great booklet now on how to set up a CRT. And you might talk about or show it, or put the link in this Zoom meeting a bit later, but it's a really good document to follow. Just from experience, and this is for the CRT team members, what we've found with SES is always have on your phone list, you know, if you're the person that they contact, make sure you have a plan B, as in if you're away on holidays, have a second person as a backup person, and let the Red Cross and SES and RFS know. But apart from that, totally agree with what everyone else said, that you have to keep the connection going or the team will fall over.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Janet. And that's important. That continuity of connection is important. Sometimes the inner workings of the emergency services can be quite a mystery to the community. And so, you know, if you're one person that you know that you could connect isn't around for any reason, then that could pose quite a risk to, you know, to the success of the relationship and the program more generally. So having that continuity of connection obviously is really important as well. Just fantastic, inspiring advice. So I'm sure anyone who's joining us today who's thinking, oh, I wonder if this would work in my community, will be really reassured and encouraged by what you've shared. So thank you so much for being part of the panel. It's been fantastic to meet you, and commend you on your efforts in relation to the CRT, and also in relation to your work with community more generally. So just fabulous to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So if you're not already inspired by all the great things that you've heard about the CRT model, we've got more to share with you. The next video that we're going to be seeing is featuring Hayley Katzen from the Yuengar community. It was my great privilege to visit Yuengar shortly after they'd been impacted by bushfire, and it's just a remarkable place, a remarkable community, but very remote. And one of the priorities to emerge from their recovery was around communications. And so we're going to be hearing a bit from Hayley about how the CRT model has helped to address that challenge.
At a debrief after the 2019 fires, our Yuengar community was clear. Given our limited mobile reception, one action we could take would be to improve our communications by using UHF radios. This had been really helpful when bushfires struck back in 2002. Here at Yuengar, we have limited mobile reception. Landlines have a habit of going out when there's a natural disaster. Many of us use satellite internet, and there are some who don't use computers at all. Clarence Valley Council agreed to fund us $20,000, but what to do given the tricky topography of the area, that few current residents have UHFs these days, and they're pricey. A repeater so we could have omnidirectional communication, or the daisy chain method, and then how would we equitably and strategically place the units? The Red Cross CRT model seemed like it might help us manage this strategically, but our community was exhausted and didn't have the energy to go down that track. It was feeling totally overwhelming until Tammy from Red Cross brought two-way specialist John Nolan out to a Yuengar Hall night. Over the last 5 months, with some delays thanks to lockdowns and flooding, we've been trying to find the right spot. It's tricky, given the limitations with private property, where the best spot for a repeater is a high fire danger area, and the very high cost of piggybacking on a commercial tower. Often, this project has felt impossible. The only light has been the cheerful, encouraging email from Red Cross Tammy, and the support of Council Officer Gemma Williams. Fortunately, conversations with RFS and Council's resilience officers led to discovering that Yugalbar Station had a tower, and they've generously agreed to a repeater being installed on it with a reasonable annual maintenance fee, our only cost. We're still not sure it's going to work, but what we have learned is that there is no silver bullet for communications. So said Darren Bullitt from local government at a meeting organised by Red Cross. So finally, this Friday, the test repeater will be set up by John and Ben from Northern Rivers Comms, and Alex, Jeff and Richard from our community will drive around our Ewingar RFS area testing to see if this improves our situation. Here's hoping it will, and that we can then manage to find a way to network our community and for enough households to have a UHF. My sincere thanks to Clarence Valley Council, to the Red Cross, and to everyone else who's been involved.
Thank you, Hayley, for that in that example about how CRT is supporting and helping the Ewingar community. So we've been hearing some fantastic endorsements of this program and all that it represents, the usefulness that it can deliver to communities around maintaining and developing communication, understanding and mobilising local capacity, and also importantly local knowledge and experience, and that two-way flow of information from the community into emergency services agencies and back. So it's just really encouraging to hear everyone's direct experiences of using CRT within their communities and their work. And just to recap on some of the advice from our panellists about sharing the where, remembering that very often after a disaster, people have had a difficult or often very difficult experience, and everyone can be a bit tired. So just being patient and remembering to share the where of as you develop your model, and remembering to have fun, and the value of social connection doesn't always have to be too dry and too serious. Communities are strengthened by every time they come together, and for whatever the reason, sharing tasks and jobs among people and connecting with what people are interested in, what their skills are, and what they're good at, having a vision for the future, and maintaining that connection, making sure that the connections don't get broken are all integral to the success of the model. So thank you to everyone for your input and your observations, your experiences. I'm going to introduce shortly some words from Doreen Harwood, who is the chair of the Tweed Byron Local Emergency Management Committee. So here's some words from Doreen.
Red Cross has been very active in Tweed Shire community through floods, bushfire and pandemic, supporting preparedness and recovery. This includes linking communities, including hard to reach communities, and those at risk of isolation with relevant emergency services organisations, support services and council. The Red Cross Community-led Resilience Team model holds benefits for everyone involved. One of the benefits for the Tweed Byron LEMC is that Red Cross brings with them an understanding of local emergency management arrangements into our communities when supporting those communities to develop and implement their resilience activities through their CRTs. The work Red Cross are doing to support our community through the CRTs is to be highly commended, and I look forward to continuing to work with them. Doreen Harwood.
Thank you, and we're grateful to those words from Doreen. When we consider the scale, the scope and the potential of the CRT, it's understandable that it's really also very important for us to get support from local, state and federal government in order to work successfully. So those relationships are important into government as well as within and between community. And so we're going to be hearing some words from Kevin Hogan, Honourable Kevin Hogan MP, Tamara Smith MP, Janelle Saffin MP and Justine Elliott MP. So thank you, Jamie. I'll hand over to you. Thanks.
I want to congratulate Red Cross on the work you have done in developing the Community-led Resilience Team project. It is great to see our community lead the way in disaster preparation. Thank you to all the hardworking volunteers who committed their time to its success. Kevin Hogan, MP. Our local Red Cross have done an amazing job developing the Community-led Resilience Team project. Resilience and recovery need to be an integral part of any approach to disaster management, and I congratulate the team for their hard work and effort in developing this much needed project. They are an absolute credit to their community. I congratulate and commend Australian Red Cross on its award-winning Community-led Resilience Team project, being showcased to a wider audience via this online event. Lismore and Murwillumbah were devastated by the floods in the wake of Tropical Cyclone Debbie, and all our local communities need this toolkit when preparing for all emergencies from bushfires to pandemics. Janelle Saffin, MP. I greatly support the creation of community-led resilience teams. The aims of the project are wholly admirable and timely, given that we face a future of unprecedented challenges due to climate change. The idea is simple but inspired: to connect people during times of crises and help solve critical issues by providing communities with accurate information. I wholeheartedly wish the team and all the volunteers involved success for the future. Tamara Smith, MP.
It's now my pleasure to introduce our final community story in today's launch event, and that is the work that the Baryagal and the Malabulma communities have been doing around disaster resilience. Again, we're hearing directly from the community, and we're doing that via video.
Recovery just doesn't happen overnight, you know, like it's a long-term journey. People are at all different levels, you know, and the beauty about the program is that long after we're gone, I mean, we'll be involved for a while assisting and delivering these programs that we've got, but what's growing is the strength of the community, and this model's all about them.
When that big monster came, and you can see I got goosebumps now, because it just brings back horrible memories. But it's good to talk about these things because, yeah, looking from a distance, I'm like, this fire is going to take about at least, I thought it'd be at least 2 weeks before we'd get to our community. Well, I was wrong. With the wind and everything else, winds changed directions. It took about at least a couple of days to get to our location. For Malabulma, and I can honestly say for our community, we wasn't prepared. We were, and I can say there's many other communities out on the far north coast who's not prepared like how we was. Through this program and through this, I can honestly say with any elements that ever happens in Mulla now, as we now get flooding, we are ready and prepared for whatever arises.
That's good.
And that's thanks to this Resilience New South Wales, thanks to Red Cross and Aboriginal Affairs and all the agencies that was involved with the program that's happening in Malabulma and Baryagal now. Got to thank you guys.
We got this model and I was like, oh wow, yeah, this is what we're doing down here, you know? So it was like this really good linkage, and it just grew from there. Yeah, it just grew from, just community, you know? And the good thing about Baryagal and Malabulma communities, it's all community driven, you know? They got a conduit in each community, Terry Robinson and Robbie King, and nothing happens with the agencies, including ourselves, unless it's come from that community first. Like we might toss around a few ideas, which we have done, and they'll look at that and they'll get back to us, whether that suits them, you know, or not. And I mean, we've got some really great programs coming up with them under this framework of CRT.
Through this program, we've got a lot of volunteers, I think about 5 or 10 from Baryagal who's just joined the Rural Fire Service.
Oh, that's great too.
See? So just the Baryagal bushfires. So at least we've got first responders here in the community in both Mulla and Baryagal. So I think there's about 5 from Mulla and 5 from Tatham. Some females and males. So we've got both genders there. And just got an update, would have been last week ago, that a lot of the membership, a few of the memberships now went through. So
that's good, eh?
We'll be on his way for a few more. And I think in the new year,
you'll be right, ready to go, eh?
We'll be in the training. And I've got to put more muscles into it.
Yeah, you'll have to. Aboriginal people are really resilient people. And this will remain because the community are growing as a collective. We're just merely providing, you know, the skills or the training or whatever we provide, they're just going to keep us going. But we'll always have a role there if they want us, you know. If they don't want us there, that's fine too, you know. As an Aboriginal person, I'm not going to push myself on anybody. Yeah, all strengths to them as far as, that's what I got to say, you know.
So some fantastic information there from our communities, and it's my great pleasure now to introduce Andrew Conklin, who is the Head of Emergency Services for Australian Red Cross. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, Anne, and thank you. It's great to be here and great to see you this afternoon. I'm wonderful to see what a great collection of people have joined this afternoon's webinar. And fantastic, just as I've been watching and listening. Can you hear me now, Anne? I'll get you to nod.
Yep.
Great. Good to be here this afternoon. And as I've been listening and watching the other presentations, it's been fantastic to see the exchange, even on the chat function, really gives you a sense of community and the different communities we all belong to, and that sense of community even across the various service providers and volunteers and different organisations who've been with us throughout the webinar. What I'd like to do very quickly, and I'm conscious of following in fairly large footsteps with some of those presentations we've just heard, I just wanted to reflect on where we're going organisationally in terms of this community resilience model and how we're utilising the best bits essentially of the CRT to help us roll out some of these programs across other parts of the country as well. And I think there's a slide to follow my title there that gives a little bit of an overview of that. In saying that, I should start, particularly given our most recent presentation, I should start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which I'm coming to you from. And they're the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, paying my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Red Cross is currently going through a bit of an update of our strategy and our longer term vision. And a big part of that is obviously our work in the emergency services realm. And in particular, one of the areas we're really focusing in on is this concept of community-led disaster resilience. And it's playing out slightly differently from state to state. And it's been fantastic to hear about the Community Resilience Teams model in New South Wales. And I'd just like to acknowledge the fantastic work of all the volunteers and team members throughout New South Wales who've been involved in this initiative, and particularly highlight Poppy and Diana and the leadership that they're providing out of the Sydney office, supporting all the work that's happening in communities on the ground. A little bit more background, if I could, around, I think sometimes people ask, well, Red Cross dabbles in a lot of things. There's the response work that we do in evacuation centres, there's the longer term recovery that you've heard a little bit about today. One of the reasons we've gotten involved in community-led disaster resilience is essentially our experience in those other settings. For years, we have worked with people at times of crisis and in their recovery journey after disasters take place. Going back many years now, best part of 10 years, I think, we set up a program called Ready Plan, which is essentially a household preparedness program that a lot of people on the webinar would be aware of. The reason we did that was there was a gap, if you like, in supporting households to be emotionally and personally prepared for disasters if and when they were to happen. We built that, and one of the things we really strongly emphasised was the importance of social capital. And I think that notion of the importance of social capital has really carried through in a lot of the work that we do, both in recovery and more recently in our community-led disaster resilience work. The recovery programs that we have underway, after Black Saturday, going back to 2009, we really got very involved in community-based recovery and ran programs for 3 to 5 years. More recently, after the 1920 bushfires that we've heard so much about today, we also have people on the ground across different parts of the country. We're operating in 5 different states. And again, very much the flavour of community-driven, community-based. We're in there supporting communities to do what they need to do, as we've heard from numerous of those case studies. In many ways, though, a lot of the recovery work that we've done over the last 10 years or so has morphed inevitably in the second or third year of a recovery program has really morphed from dealing with the previous disaster to people in communities thinking about what might come next and how they can be better prepared for it if something is to happen in their communities. And that really shone a light for us on the importance of disaster resilience. Similarly, we have also done quite a bit of work at the policy end of things with an organisation called the Australian Business Roundtable for Disaster Resilience, which quite a few years ago put out a report or commissioned a report that was produced by Deloitte that really highlighted the challenge that we're all coming to terms with now, which is the huge investment that we see in dealing with disasters year on year and their impacts on communities, and the lack of funding back then in the pre-disaster or the preparedness or resilience building side of things. We're seeing a really important shift in the policy at the moment, which I think is fantastic, where organisations like the new National Recovery and Resilience Agency, Resilience New South Wales, who we heard from Shane earlier in the piece, are really starting to focus their energy and put resources in a big way into that preparedness piece and building community resilience. So we're starting to see the dial really shifted from just dealing with the impact when these horrible events happen to people to actually trying to prevent them in the best case scenario, or at a minimum, preparing people to be better able to deal with them. So that's a little bit about why we're so intent on driving this disaster resilience model, picking up on the key components of things like the CRT that we've heard so much about. Community-led is very clearly critical as well. We do quite a bit of work around program evaluation. We're looking to continually improve what we're doing, not interfering with what's happening at the grassroots and the wonderful ways in which some of these things are evolving, but just making sure that the tools and the approaches that we're bringing are continually improving and enabling those things to happen. The other thing that I'd like to highlight just finally, Anne, or two quick things, the where do we focus this work? In an environment in which, you know, everyone is stretched for resources and the capacity to do things. I think one of the great successes of the CRT model has been local communities taking local action. That's something we want to continue to encourage. We also want to focus on those areas that are most at risk and most vulnerable to disasters in the future to ensure that we're able to engage people as quickly and effectively as possible in that work. And then the last thing that I would just highlight is the importance of that collaborative approach, not only in local communities where these events take place, but also more broadly in the development of the practice that we bring to the table in terms of working in communities. The more that different organisations work together, both at the local community level, but also at the policy and practice development level, the better the outcomes for the communities in which we work. So thanks again to you, Anne, for your involvement this afternoon. And thanks to everyone who's organised today and for the fantastic input from all the people and all the examples of the work happening in the communities. We look forward to continuing and expanding the work of things like CRT, not only in New South Wales, but across the country more broadly. Thanks, Anne.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you for those reflections and the great work that Red Cross is doing to support this initiative and many initiatives around Australia. Just remarkable. And we've got a very lively conversation happening in the chat, so I'd encourage you to have a look at that when you get a chance. So thank you, everyone, for your input and your interest. We're now returning to the Yuengar community with one last video for today's launch, and that is just having a look at the evolution of the program and how it's being used to support the Yuengar community.
There's been two fires from about 10 k's that way to 10 k's that way in 2002, and that one made it in 20 minutes, 20 k's in 20 minutes. And I reckon that last one probably went 80 kilometres in same number of minutes, all the way past Rapville. Our property is about 2 kilometres from this gate. And 3 hills, so signal wouldn't get. We can get signal from community hall. I go out, I see big smoke over the sky coming, and exactly to our direction. And I ran away on hill near the house, and so fire about this place. So from this place to our place, 2 kilometers, 2 minutes. So we ran to open gates of kettles. We start sprinklers. We start generator. We had these 2 minutes to save our life and our animals. It was terrible. Preparations, everything. The trigger is the failure of a wet season. So if the wet season fails in summer, the next spring there's probably going to be a fire of great magnitude. We discussed a lot of what was happened at bushfire, how we can improve the situation. And one of the problems is communication. Yes, and yeah.
My personal role is to just help people connect with each other. So you know your neighbours, and if you need something, it's not a hard ask.
With that little radio? In some spots, a little bit dodgy, but other spots quite clear. Yeah, right. So if Alex drove off now with his little radio, he'd be in communication with this radio for 2 kilometres down the road, as long as he's got a clear line of sight. But once the repeater's in, then when this radio's broadcasting and bouncing off the repeater, Alex can get the signal from a lot further away with his little radio. This is Valley View Road there. That's where Nadine lives. So Valley View Road on the left on your way up. That'd be a good spot to do one from too. Okay. Okay. Okie doke. Yeah. We'll listen out for you. So we can try here, for example, just to be sure that this short distance already is working.
Hello, do you listen me?
Yeah, we got you.
Where are you?
I am approximately in middle between community hall and Frankie property. Not far.
Yep, okay.
Okay, we go for them. He's probably going up the hill now. He'll tell us when he gets back. He'll remember where he could hear us. This is another cross road to another. Our name is Hunter Road. It would be interesting if we can listen here. Hello, Jeff, do you hear me? No, we can't. You're all broken up. I can't understand you. I don't think they. I think that's it. He's getting further away than he was. So he's the last one he did. He's 1, 2. He's going out 3 kilometres. The last one he only went. Hello, Jeff. Do you hear me? Silence.
Everybody wants to connect. Everyone wants to feel a lot safer than they did 2 years ago. And so working on it now while they're in a more calmer position and there's nothing happening around them gives them that directive that they need.
Anytime people talk about fires, I come out and I talk about it because I try and impress on them what to expect and how to get ready for it. It's all up to you to look after yourself. You can't expect RFS to come and save you, because they just mightn't be able to, or it might happen so fast they won't have a chance to.
Well, I hope you have enjoyed today's launch event. We've certainly had some amazing examples of the way the CRT program is being used in the community, and also an insight into its beginnings and the work of Tammy and her team in actually developing up this model, which is, as we've heard, being taken up with great enthusiasm by communities right around New South Wales and hopefully soon even beyond. When I think back to my own experience of disaster in 2009, we certainly had relationships within the community with each other. What we were lacking was those connections and relationships into the emergency management system. And we were trying to build those in the aftermath of disaster, and that's incredibly challenging. So one of the things that I think I'm most enthusiastic about in relation to the CRT model is that opportunity to think about these things in advance, to actually get to know each other, to understand how the emergency management system works, and for emergency response agencies to have that much more clear and nuanced understanding of the communities they work with and what their strengths and vulnerabilities might be. I really commend this model to you. I think it's just a fantastic initiative, and I look forward to its continued success. I think it builds on the really unique relationship that Red Cross has within the emergency management system, that ability to reflect community in such a positive and holistic way. So thank you all for your time today. Thank you for joining us. And thank you particularly to all of our fabulous presenters, our panelists and our guests, and also those messages of encouragement and enthusiasm from our MPs, members of Parliament and government representatives. It's just been a really positive endorsement, I think, of this great program. On your screen now, you're seeing some information. If any of what you've seen or heard today has caused you any distress or concern, we really encourage you to reach out and get in touch with one of these services. Emergency management is a difficult business, and being in communities that are impacted by disaster is also an incredibly challenging experience. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you need any help in that way. Thank you again for your time. It's been fabulous to join you, and again, I'm just so pleased and impressed with this program and all that it represents in terms of improving relationships between communities and the emergency management sector. So I wish you well, and look forward to seeing the continued enthusiastic way that this program is being taken up by communities right around the state. Thank you so much, and all the best. And if you have any questions about the program, then I'd encourage you to address those to recovery@redcross.org.au, and the resources will be available, I believe, through a follow-up to today's webinar as well as a survey. So don't let it end here. Make sure that you find out more and find out how it might work in your community and see what you can do. Thank you so much.